My name is Bob Maloney with Canon USA. I'm part of the large format imagePROGRAF division, and I want to talk to you guys today specifically about how to get good color out of your devices. First, I'd like to thank you all for coming, and I'd like to thank B&H for having us here today. So first, let's get started with what we're going to do today, which again is how to get accurate and repeatable color using our printers, Canon imagePROGRAF printers, with our Photoshop plugin. So what is color management is a pretty defined term. So I need to read off my slide and tell you that color management is a way to set up your environment to allow your input and output devices to speak the same language so you can get accurate and predictable results. And the ultimate goal of all this today is to try and get what you see on the screen is what you get over on the print side. So we're going to use some color management software and hardware today to be able to do that. And that is to profile your devices. By profiling your devices, you're getting them to speak the same language in terms of their entire color gamut, or what's repeatable out of those devices. Now, a lot of you have other printers, not Canon or any other manufacturers, maybe even Canon printers. The drivers themselves that are supplied by the printer manufacturers are a really good place to start. Okay, so the canned profiles that they've created and everything are good enough to start with. But variations between the inks, the machines, the paper manufacturers, the way it's manufactured, lot numbers, white points, are things that just aren't taken into account when you're just using a driver. So to get accurate results, basically you're going to need some extra steps, and that's what we're going to do today. Okay. So first of all, we have software from Canon that is free with all of our imagePROGRAF printers. There is an Adobe Photoshop plugin, so you can export your files and print them outside of the printer driver. And then there's also a media configuration tool, which allows you to set up your own custom medias, whether they be Canon or any other third-party media that's out there. Yes?
Do you have a plugin for Lightroom or Elements, or only Photoshop?
The question is, do we have a plugin for Lightroom or Elements? And that is no right now. Currently, it is only for Adobe Photoshop. But we do have print drivers for those things. All right. So what I'd like to do first is show you a little bit about some of the software that's available and the hardware that's available to do specific profiling of your devices. This software is i1 software for profiling our monitor. I'm going to launch it from start here so you guys can see how it adds in. There's probably 6 or 7 different devices that X-Rite makes to measure color. Some are just colorimeters, some are colorimeters and spectrophotometers. A colorimeter allows you to calibrate your monitor and your projector, and usually scanners as well. A spectrophotometer will also allow you to profile media because it measures reflective light. This is i1 Profiler software. It's free software. If you have a colorimeter and you plug it in, it acts as a dongle and it'll activate the monitor and the projector portion of the software so you can calibrate those devices. Okay. So this is the interface. It allows you to do display profiling, projector profiling, printer profiling. And today we're just going to focus on display profiling. If you've got the best monitor, the latest, the greatest LED, HD monitor, and you're using it to look at your input, and then you're going to output the printer, without calibrating it with a colorimeter, you're never going to get accurate results. It's always going to look a lot more vibrant on your monitor than it does on the printer. So this device and the software is going to take it and allow me to make it all get into the same color space. So does anyone know about Luminance? Okay, like 5,000 Kelvin, 5,500 Kelvin, 6,500 Kelvin, okay. So 5,000 Kelvin is roughly warm, it's daylight. Today, we're in roughly about a 5,500 Kelvin environment, and 6,500 Kelvin seems to be the new standard for photography viewing. It's mainly for your fluorescents and your CFLs. It's a much cooler light. So to start with, I'm going to tell it we've got our LCD monitor, and I'm going to set this up for 5500. The luminance on this screen itself, since this is a brand new iMac Pro, is very high. Okay, it can get up to probably 200 or so. Old monitors, old LCD monitors are a lot lower in their luminance, so you'll have to kind of check with your manufacturer of it to see. But if it's something that you've gotten in the last year or so, roughly around 160. So then we're going to go ahead and calibrate our device. And this is an i1 spectrophotometer colorimeter. Comes with a calibration patch right here. You just set it on the calibration patch, go ahead and click, and it's going to measure the white point of a standard that it knows. So if this white point checker gets dirty over time, gets scratched up, whatever, that's something you're going to have to go back in, send to X-Ray, and they'll send you a new one. So it says we're good there. This device just hangs it on your monitor. It's a little counterweight balance system. So we lock it in. We go ahead and hit our calibrate button. And then start measurement. So it's asking me to place it on the monitor, like so. So it's going to run through a specific patch of colors, and then it's going to ask me to get my brightness adjustment as close as possible. It doesn't have to be exactly there. So I'm at 154 now. By lowering it a little bit, I'm going to say that's pretty good. And then it's going to go ahead and measure probably about 40 different patches of color that are emitted on the monitor. So we're almost finished here, about a minute remaining. And what that's going to do is it's going to lower the color space of this monitor to get more towards the output color gamut. So once it is done calibrating, you'll notice the screen may get darker, a little yellower. So okay, we've got the monitor calibrated. And then we're going to go ahead and name it. And we'll create and save that. And what I noticed is it brought up my brightness just a hair. So by using it in this environment and telling it 5500, I believe the last time I used it was 6500. And so there's our image that I've been printing today. I'm happy with it. Everything's good. So I can go ahead and close out this and know that now what I'm using is calibrated. So let's go into Photoshop and talk a little bit about the Photoshop plugin that Canon offers so you can output your files. Today on these printers, we have the same ink sets and the same media. So we're utilizing a premium semi-gloss, 280 GSM, Canon backed media on both printers, and the same ink set, which is our Canon Lucia EX inks. Later on, when we're doing some prints, we can go into the specifics of the printer, what the technology is, how the print head works, and things like that. But right now, let's go ahead and do some output. So when we have a file open, the first thing we're going to want to do is view it to the conditions that we're going to print. So if you go under View, and you go to Proof Setup, and you check Custom, right now, since the last thing I did, it saves, which is already here, we'll go ahead and bring it to where it normally is, which is a working CMYK or swap. And you'll notice things turned a little bit different in terms of its color. So all of these different profiles that are here are different standards in the industry for printing. For instance, if I wanted to make it look like newsprint, or if we wanted to set it up for a specific Canon media, like we have here today, we'll just find it in that giant list of all the different medias that we offer for this printer under the Canon brand name. And then you have to choose what setting you're going to print at. Are we going to print at high quality, highest quality, or highest quality with the highest number of passes? Today we're just going to use high quality. And you'll see a little bit of change there.
Explain the differences between those.
Yes. The differences between them are the number of passes and the amount of ink that goes down. So under the high setting, you can only utilize the 8-bit and high, so it's about a 10 pass. And then on highest, it is 16 pass, and you can also utilize 16-bit encryption. And then highest with highest number of passes is up to 32 pass. So you get a little bit better saturation and a little bit of better tonal value. But between highest and highest with number of passes, there isn't that much difference to the average person. It's no, it has nothing to do with the size of the print at all, or taking a smaller file to making it bigger. It only has to do with the amount of ink that's going down on that page and the amount of dots that are getting placed on the paper. So if you're going to have a gradient, for instance, the highest number of passes would probably look the best, but between highest number of passes and highest, you probably won't see that much of a difference, but you would between high and highest. We also have black point compression, and what that's going to do is allow us to get the most gradients between midtones and highlights. So if we uncheck that, you'll notice that some of the features in the shadows and the highlights, they kind of get lost. So you go from more of a real dark spot to a light spot quickly, as opposed to it bringing it very gradually through the different gradients of that shadow. So right here under the proof setup, your rendering intent. What is it and why do you use it? Perceptual is most used for people and pictures. So it gives you the best tonal value for skin tones, things like that. Saturation is good for graphics, posters, signage. And then relative colorimetric and absolute colorimetric are best for logos or PMS colors, trying to get a color match to a specific PMS color. But it may not give you the most accurate overall color value. So it will take specific knowns and try and bring those out, but it won't give you an overall consistent tonal. So now that I've got it in the correct color space of what I think I'm going to get out on the printer, we can go ahead and do some output. So instead of going to file print like you normally would and utilizing the driver, we're going to use the Adobe Photoshop plugin from Canon. And that's, again, it's free software. It comes with the discs on the printer. You can download it from canonusa.com. In the main tab, we're going to select the type of paper from a list, which is our Premium Semi-Gloss 280. Here you can check the print mode. And so if we're in highest gradient 16-bit and high accuracy 600 DPI, or you can utilize the faster setting, which is the high or standard mode. It's less passes, faster printing, not as accurate, but very good for just quick proofs if you're trying to get an idea of what's going to come out. So the prints I've already done here today were all at highest and 16-bit and highest gradient. So today, let's try one over here at high and 8-bit. Now, if you didn't have any of these Canon profiles that we create that are available on our website, you could just use auto color. And that is going to give you very good results, because when we set up these printers from the factory, we calibrate them and we load all of the Canon specific branded media profiles on them. Those are usually created by someone like X-Rite for us. Takes a very long time. They average those profiles across multiple different printers, and they're usually within about 1 to 2 delta E. So I'm going to leave it on auto color and perceptual. I'm going to take a look at the page setup and say, if it was just the document size itself, it would be an 11 by 14. But with our plugin, you can do multiple different types of enlargements or reductions. So if I wanted to fit it to a specific page size, I could go ahead and change it to any number of known or custom different page sizes. Or I could just say, I've got a 24-inch roll of media. Let's just fit it to the width of the media. So now in landscape mode, it's going to print a rough 24 by 19. And in portrait mode, it's going to fit it to a 24 by 30. You can also just use scaling if you have any percentage you want to use up to 600%. Color settings are just general for CMYK, RGB, lightness, contrast, saturation. These are things that we don't want to play with, because now that we're in a color managed workflow, we won't have to use those. So we're going to go ahead and print that one over here. So once we open up the media configuration tool, we're going to click on Add Custom Paper, and we're going to add a media. Select the printer, which is the one we have here, 6350. Click the next button. Now it's going to go out and talk to it. Then here's your media types that are supplied by Canon that are in the printer itself. Let's see if we have some. There's our fine art papers, natural, bright white, canvases, matte papers. Right now we're utilizing the premium semi-gloss 280. And we'll hit next. We OK that. And now we'll change it to our test. And this is limited to 16 characters. So if the media name is larger than that, you'll have to abbreviate it. But always name it the same thing so you don't get confused between what's in the printer and what shows up in the driver. So right there, it asked us to go ahead and load the paper into the machine. Since we've already done that, it's going to ask us where the paper source comes from. So is it the manual feed tray here, or is it the roll? And now it's going to do an automatic paper feed adjustment. And it prints out a test pattern and then brings it back into the machine and scans it with the sensor inside the printer. So it's totally an automated process. This is going to help for films and real slick types of photo base, because each different manufacturer coats the back side of their film as well as the front side differently. And sometimes they're slicker on the back, so they feed differently through the machine. So if it does, it'll sense that and then calibrate its feed adjustment so that you don't get any banding. So it tells us we're complete with the feed adjustment and it looks good. You only need to perform that once. So here are the settings that I spoke about a little bit before in the advanced tabs that you asked about. So the cutting is automatic as default, so it'll always cut the paper. You can tell it to eject the paper and then you tell it when to cut, or you can just say user cut, which means you're going to take a pair of scissors and cut it. So for instance, if all you did on these printers was print canvas, If you were to automatically cut that every day, you'd go through a cutter in about 6 months. So you'd have to continually replace that. So I would recommend user cut for canvas and other thick medias that have a scrim in it. And sometimes there's particular medias that it just can't get through, it's so thick. So the dry time being off right now is its default, but you can set that to any amount of time you want for the machine to let the print hang there and dry before it cuts it and falls into a basket. This particular media that we're using right now is a microporous media, so it takes the ink and sucks it under a barrier coat so that it is dry to the touch immediately. It doesn't mean it's dry, so it can ding very easily still because there's a wet layer underneath that barrier coat. So if these were final production prints, I would be very careful, take them off the printer, set them down, let them dry 5 or 10 minutes before I went to frame them, mat them, do anything with them. So you can adjust that as you see fit. Or let's say you're in a situation where you need to print a 4-foot print and you're leaving for the day. Well, don't let it fall on the floor, just tell it dry time 60 seconds, a minute, whatever, and then maybe user cut. Borderless printing we're going to permit. I didn't show you that, and I will if you'd like to see it, but the printer can actually print borderless. It has gutters on either side overhanging the media, so there's overspray that sprays outside of the paper area to get you an actual borderless print. It'll print out the first lead edge to about 1/16 of an inch past the cutter and then cut it, and then when it prints the trail edge, it'll go ahead and cut 1/16 of an inch inside that as well. So you get a true borderless print, so there's no finishing involved. So here's our test print, and this is where we're going to do a series of different ink density levels on the page to find out how much ink this new custom media that you're putting in it can hold. We're going to leave everything on auto for the head height and the vacuum strength, unless you know exactly the thicknesses of your paper and how the vacuum works. Just leave everything at auto.
Are things like the thickness of the paper affected by the humidity? Things like bad weather conditions?
Well, okay, so the question is, does humidity and other atmospheric conditions affect media? Yes, it does. If you had a shop or a studio that wasn't climate controlled, for instance, and in the summer it's 85 degrees and humid, and then in the winter it's 50 degrees and not humid at all, you'll notice a difference in that output because the paper actually will absorb the moisture. So some of your blacks may become a little cloudier when it's humid out. So what I recommend is, if you're going to do a lot of printing on a specific media, go ahead and take it off the machine and put it back in the plastic bag when you're done with it and store it somewhere in a Rubbermaid container with a piece of silica in there to absorb moisture, things like that. But if you were to just leave it open on the machine, atmospheric conditions can affect the output. So you click on the test print button, and then the priority is an image and the print quality. We're going to go at high 600 DPI, so middle of the road. And then these are all the different saturation levels. So the Canon standard paper of what we think that the paper we have in it is going to hold the amount of ink, from there, and then the lowest possible setting all the way up to the highest possible setting. Now, you can also choose your own image over the preloaded image if you have a specific 8-bit TIFF. So we usually let this dry for 4 or 5 minutes or so, and then we evaluate it. And since this particular paper is microporous and it's very high-end, good paper, we choose that setting to start the baseline from. You're not going to see a whole bunch of difference between the highest and the lowest, but look in the knockout section and then look in the primary colors, especially for the muddiness. of the density. So don't forget, this is the standard. So this is what it's at right now. So you're choosing from here to here. And the best one to look at is usually magenta.
Can you hold that up so we can...
Yep. And we'll pass it around so you can see them individually, because from back there you probably can't tell. But you'll see that the amount of ink being put down is a lot greater down at the highest density. So you arbitrarily are going to choose for that custom media that you're making, which one of these looks best to you. I think the main thing really is just to know that if your monitor itself isn't calibrated, you're never going to get what you see here is what you get there. So you'll never know if what you're outputting is accurate. And this way, you know, if you do manipulate the image at all, you can soft proof it on the monitor before you waste ink and paper over on this side. All right, well, thank you guys very much.
For more information, please visit us online, give us a call, or stop by our New York City Superstore. You can also connect with us on the web.